Thank you for tuning in to the Edalex podcast. We are an EdTech whose mission is to surface learning outcomes, digital assets, and the power of individual achievement. Each episode features thought-provoking conversations with global technology leaders and educators, where we discuss how we can deliver better outcomes for 21st century learners.
Hi, I'm Dan McFadyen, co-founder and managing director at Edalex. I'm thrilled to be joined today by Julian Ridden. Julian is the head of growth for Australia at Quizizz. Julian's experience spans working at educational institutions, LMS providers Moodle and Instructure, as well as other EdTech providers. He is an educator, keynote speaker, product leader, and lifelong learner. Julian, thank you so much for joining me today.
Thanks for having me, Dan. As you know, I hate these intro bios, but thank you for putting that together. It makes me sound a little bit competent, and for that, I'm appreciative. Thank you.
Always. I'm here to help. That's part of my friendship and service. So to contextualize, you and I both met. It seems a few lifetimes ago for both of us, quite a few years ago, and we do often catch up, as we were joking earlier, at conferences. So at your booth or my booth, and so it's great to connect again today. Now, you're currently the head of growth for Australia at Quizizz. So tell us about Quizizz and your focus there.
Yeah, no, thank you for that. And first of all, I just want to let you know, I think anybody who listens to this who works in the EdTech space will appreciate this next quote. I always refer to EdTech as the Hotel California, because we try to check out, but we can never leave. So we might be, back at the coalface or in a different organization, but yeah, it's great that, as I said, we've known each other for so long, and there are so many people who it has been 15, 20 years, and every time I see them, they're just in a new position or a new company or a new school. But yes, we never seem to be able to escape. Thank you for the opportunity. I'll talk very briefly about Quizizz. Quizizz is a company that provides formative assessment tools very heavily focused around gamification for the K-12 space, although we have a few universities using it as well. But I'll be honest, one of my key reasons for joining it is they're very heavily invested in the AI side of things. And I think they're doing it in a very clever way, which, again, I'm very keen as we talk about today, what is good use of AI, bad use of AI, and risks. So we'll kind of touch back on that. But yeah, look, my role here is that this is a company that's had huge success in the US. They kind of launched accidentally at the right time, just in time for COVID, where digital technology and especially tools to engage students remotely was, really huge. And at the moment, they're used. I think I have to please apologize up front. When I say I've recently joined, it has only been this year, so I've got to get my data right. But they're used in about 8 out of 10 US schools. And look, we're doing a big global launch, and I've been brought on board to help get us started in the Australian market, which is very exciting. So yeah, that's what we're doing here.
Brilliant, fantastic. So in that bio that I cobbled together for you, it shares some of only, and it actually doesn't do you justice, but you've worked at a range of different educational institutions, including colleges, both Moodle as well as Instructure, a number of other companies. And one thing that's really shone throughout is your passion for teaching and learning. And I'd say over the past year, what's really come to the fore is around AI and how AI can, how we can weave that into education for potentially incredible impact. So let's start to narrow in on that. So why AI and education? Do they mix, and why do they? If so, why do they mix together so well?
This will surprise you none the least when I say I want to take a bit of a rambly response to that answer. So I actually think this is
hey, time's up. Great. It was a great discussion.
Thank you, Matt Damon. We'll see you next week. No, there's an obscure reference for those who pick up that one. No, the reason for the slightly rambly answer is people look at using EdTech, educational technologies, for different reasons. Sometimes it's because we have to do everything online because of distance education, or things like COVID. But for most of us, we use e-learning tools to augment our face-to-face practice. We're trying to increase an efficiency or engagement or something like that. And the reason I take the slight rambly answer is, you mentioned that you've always been drawn to the passion I have. Yeah, for me, EdTech has been about a passion of how do we deliver more quality education at scale. And that for me has always been the driver. Now, that's much easier said than done. In the I'd like to say early days, I think many people are still guilty of this, but, we go, oh, we have an LMS and we throw 15 PDFs up in a quiz and go, we're doing e-learning.
Yes, right.
Like all things, what was it? Savage from Mythbusters quite famously once said, every tool's a hammer. You can look at a problem and every tool's a hammer. The LMS became that. But the reason for me for the ramble is good EdTech really does actually help us with this problem of quality at scale. When we're looking at, lecture theatres, we've got a higher student to teacher count than ever before. How do we provide quality? Well, maybe we can put more things online. How do I better support those who need support, be it academically, neurodiversity, physically, whatever those needs are? Well, maybe I can use online tools to provide better differentiation and better support. And that, for me, has what's always driven me to the EdTech space, which is we can use these tools to provide quality at scale if we do it right, to allow us to augment. And I'm going to say the word classroom, but it could be a university lecture theatre or a K-12. So the reason I start with that preamble is that what has really excited me genuinely about the generative AI space. Here are tools that are built to understand context in language. At its core, that's what we're seeing with generative AI. And then, of course, we're going to talk about all the ways it's expanded from that. But the ability for me as an educator who is time poor, who is trying to focus on my educational outcomes, to say, actually, here's a tool that can genuinely save time, but allow me to create, to remix, to differentiate, to research, or even to provide tools for my students that will allow them to do the same. That really is a significant shifting moment for us. And we will spend the next half hour talking about, the benefits of that, the risks of that. Like, there is so much to unpack. Right. But at its core, that's what excites me about the Gen AI movement. It is really the next stepping stone into how we can provide quality at scale and how we can use computing power potentially to help us reach that goal.
Brilliant. And you've been, as you've investigated various technologies, you've been great in terms of sharing that on LinkedIn and elsewhere. And I recall a few videos where you said, my mind has just been blown by the latest technology, and then a couple months pass, and I'm like, that's ancient history. And now look at what this new tech can do. So Gen AI is moving so quickly. There's so many. Yeah, we obviously hear about the big names like ChatGPT and OpenAI, but there's so much else happening out there. So how, and you and I focus on EdTech for a living, but how do teachers, parents, administrators, how should they keep up? How can they keep up? Yeah.
Oh, I'd like you to throw the easy questions out first. Thanks for that. I appreciate that.
World Peace is up next, so just a heads up. So
yeah. No, look, my honest and genuine response is a combination of I don't know, and yet also it's a bit easier than we think, which is a weird fence to try and sit on between those two lines. The speed of movement has been astronomical. It is really weird to think that, again, AI has been around for years. This is not a new thing. We talk about AI as a new thing, but we've been using AI for Grammarly. Grammarly is a wonderful example of a text-based AI that has helped save many of my emails from being dog's breakfast for years. We look at Apple Maps, Google Maps. We've had AI and data-centered AI tools for over a decade in active use. It's been around since the 70s. What changed November a year ago? So again, it's really important to kind of put this date on it. It has now been, 13, 14 months since OpenAI released this little product that even they had themselves come after going, we didn't think it would have that big an impact. But where they went and released a product that suddenly made the world take notice of what generative AI could do. And we'll unpack that just a second. But when the world suddenly kind of grasped onto this and went, wow, that's the capability of these tools. What we have seen in that last 13, 14 months of growth has been astronomical. Every day there's another 5 new tools. Of those 5 new tools, 4 of them are remixes, reused ideas, but maybe one of them just changes everything. So how do we keep up? Get back to your question. If you're lucky to be people like you and I, we are in the networks. We are. I'm looking at my LinkedIn's, but yeah, I have set up numerous feeds and searches, and yes, I'm using AI to help me do it. That helped me keep track of what's going on and to filter through. Try and separate that wheat and the chaff. But we are unique. We are special individuals, and I don't say that to make ourselves sound extra special, but we have that time and experience, and it's kind of comes part of our jobs. The good news is, though, and this is where I go from saying, hey, it's really hard and there's so much coming through, but education networks are built to share quality data, and be it organizations like Theta and Ascolite in the higher ed, organizations like Mighty here in Australia in the K-12 space, and Vine and others like that, educators are already getting together and going, hey, not only have I found this cool new tool, but this is how I'm using it for my educational practice. And for educators, all I can say is connect with your networks. You'll be absolutely amazed at what your peers are doing, and that's how you can get yourself up to speed. Let someone else do the work.
Yeah.
But engage in that community of practice. And in that last, again, I keep saying year and a half, 14 months. Let's just kind of average it to year and a half for the sake of argument. In that time, we have seen so many different educational communities kind of grappling with and wrangling with and pulling apart and putting back together, and now starting to have coherent views and coherent thoughts on AI. And I think that really is a magic point that as we come into 2024, that those networks really are providing huge value to those inside of them.
Well said. And I think, yeah, I want to pull on that thread. I was fortunate enough to join a thought leadership group of school principals, senior teachers, and other leaders, and coming from low socioeconomic background, and it was interesting, hearing one individual profess their ignorance and fear. I don't know what it is, to someone else who's actually circumventing the state restriction on banning AI, because they know that's where the students are doing when they get home. So and to really bring them into that world, and it just as with any technology, Gen AI can be used for good or bad, or anywhere in between. And so a lot of the initial reaction was, oh, well, we don't understand it yet. Let's just ban it. And then we don't, then it goes, not that it goes away, but let's study it and figure it out. And then.
Well, actually, let me go back that step, because I want to repack that a little bit, though, because I actually want to make sure, this is actually a hill I will die on. I will often defend those who have to do academic or IT decisions at enterprise levels, because they're always the ones who cop the brunt of, AI just came out and a Department of Education New South Wales just went, oh, we're banning it. These are actually really important responses, because when you're doing it at enterprise level, when you have tens of thousands, if not more, students under your care, we do need to be at least more aware. Where I won't die on the hill, but what I've been really pleased and grateful to see how Australia has handled it is those bans weren't there to say we're going to, because I pick up the quote, I know you're saying it jokingly, but we're going to ban it until it goes away. That actually hasn't been how Australia has dealt with it. It's we're banning it until we get a better understanding of risk, and then we're going to slowly release. Now, this is incredibly irritating for those at the coalface, and I feel for you, and I have been that person who happily circumvents those processes. I'm not here to advocate for that. But the reason I do think it's important to recognize that, when these things are going so fast, let's talk about the most famous example that happened in the first couple of months of ChatGPT. Someone at Samsung decided to upload all this private corporate data into the GPT because they were going to do some really cool evaluation with it, not realizing that the terms and conditions very openly stated that anything shared into here would become part of the model, and that data then suddenly became open. The person at Samsung didn't intentionally choose to make that decision. The ChatGPT wasn't doing that, but no one had quite understood how the tool worked yet. So that's why I just kind of interrupted. So I think it's important that when we have these levels of bureaucracy, that yes, we do ban, but the where things happen for better or for worse is either they ban till it goes away, which we all know there are organizations of that ilk. They are the ones that we try to avoid. but ones that have quickly tried to move to understand. And in Australia, the speed of the Department of Education, hell, even the speed of our universities who are renowned for, I will never name this person, but years ago, I worked for a university here in Sydney. I got pulled into a DVC's office where I was being berated for my job performance, and I was horrified. And I was sat down, and this is the exact words, I kid you not, Julian, there is the speed of universities and the speed of icebergs, and I shouldn't have to tell you which is faster. I was being berated for speed. Now, we don't ever want to get back to those worlds. But universities who are renowned for not working at speed have done incredible things. And I will highlight University of Sydney, Macquarie University, Hong Kong University, have been doing fantastic things. So yeah, again, I know it's a slight segue, but yeah, I do think it's important that slowing down in this world is critically important. And as we talk about risks, I want to dive back into that a bit more. But yeah, doing it until it goes away, well, that's a different story altogether, and we'll let those people. Darwinian evolution will take care of itself.
Well said, and that's fantastic clarification there. And I think as you've said, with time now, at least here in Australia, we now have the Australian framework for generative AI in schools. So there's been the thought, the planning, and so a number of the blanket bans have now been loosened. And certainly when we're talking about primary or secondary school children, especially, privacy and security has to be paramount there.
Absolutely.
So with this evolution, do you think they're getting it right? This balance of access and control and safety. Yeah.
Look, I look to the sky because I don't think there is an answer for that. I think that overall we're being cautious, and I think that is a correct response. As a person who is an AI advocate, anybody who has followed my LinkedIn feed, I apologize for the ongoing onslaught of, oh my God, check out this fantastic tool that you see on my feed. Yeah. But now, as an advocate and as a high user of these tools, I have been very glad to see the cautious nature of approach. But that being said, that there is good caution, and then there's kind of an overzealous caution. And in some markets overseas, we've seen that. In Australia, I think we have struck a relatively strong balance. Another piece of interesting history, most people don't know this, it was only in the late, I think it was 2003, the people who watch this after the fact can Google the exact date, it was only in the early 2000s that Australian law made it legal to record TV onto a VCR. We have had this tool in the 1970s and the 1980s. It was literally only in the 2000s that copyright law caught up. How can legal statute and policy possibly keep up with change? And that's before, the VCR was around for 20 odd years before that finally got, everybody was doing it. No one was being charged, but it didn't change that the law took this long to catch up. The law around AI, how do you have a chance of catching up when the tool is evolving on literally a daily basis? So again, I rambled, but I think that's why caution is important.
Right.
When you're no chance of your law keeping up, and law protects society, right? In theory. But if the laws that protect you can't keep up, then caution is warranted to make sure that, we are doing mitigated risk. And I think that's the word you're going to hear me use a lot. It's not about risk. Every tool has risk. The internet has risk.
Right.
My computer has risk. My dog has risk. But it's all about what's the mitigated risk versus reward. And I think we're doing that well in this country at the moment.
Great. And so with that context, how should an institution be it a school or university or RTO, some other provider? How should they approach AI?
All right. Look, again, the old adage is true, is that there is no right answer to this question, but there are many wrong ones. So let's talk about the wrong ones first. Now, it's a weird way of positioning it, but it's true. So here's the wrong way to look at it. The wrong way to look at it is go, oh, wow, I found this website. There's an AI for that, which, by the way, awesome website. Check it out. And every day is telling me 15 new tools that I can check out. So I'm going to go and load all of these tools and play with all of them. Do not go down that rabbit hole of, I have just walked into a Bunnings of AI and I'm going to go down every aisle and just buy everything and see what's going to happen.
Right.
You joke that way, it makes it obvious why that's a bad methodology. You don't quite know what you're playing with. You don't know what it is you're trying to solve. You're getting caught by the shiny. You're being caught by a marketing message and you don't understand risk. That's why just grabbing random tools, I would never advocate. The good way of doing it is think about the problems that you're trying to solve first. What is a problem that you have that an AI could potentially help you solve? Oh, I really want to take this resource and differentiate it because I've got 3 students I have various neurodiversity needs and need things explained in different ways. I don't normally have time to rewrite this resource in 3 different ways. Maybe that's something that an AI could help me with. I really want to go multimodal. I want to be able to take my written form because I'm not good at speaking, which is obviously not me. I'm saying this as if I was somebody else. Where speaking is my weakness. No, but not everybody does. So, wait a second. There are AIs that can take the written word and turn it into now a human sounding voice. Maybe that's a problem that you can solve. Please always focus on what is the challenge that you are trying to solve. Out of that, okay, great. What are some AI tools that may be able to help you? And that's where you start your exploration. The last thing is that you don't have to be the first. Being the first is a skill set that not everybody has. Being the first is someone who's going to be the first is someone who is actually able to take their passion for what they're doing, but to also put that aside and to critically think about risk. What is the pro and con of this? And if that is you listening to this, awesome, please be that person, but then share. And that's where we start this conversation. If you are not that person who's good at being the first and you recognize that you get caught up in that shiny thing, which again, not a criticism, like that is an awesome thing that you get passionate and you want to explore, but then go to your networks, find the networks where you can then go, all right, I found this really cool thing. I think this really solved my problem. Can you help me verify that this is not going to have issues? And I don't know if you'd be willing to let me segue a little bit off our script, because I think this is where we should talk about what are the issues of AI, because I think some are obvious and some are not.
Please. Yeah.
So when we talk about risks of AI, everybody first of all talks about, it hallucinates. And for those of you who are still catching up on terminology, hallucination is an interesting word. It's when the AI didn't know, so the AI just made it up, but it states it as fact. We always like to throw this company under the bus. They have fixed it since then, but this was the first high-profile case when Google launched Bard on a big keynote stage and live streaming it out to the world. They asked Bard, what discovered? I think the exact question was like along the lines of, what discovered the first exoplanet? And it mentioned how the James Webb Telescope did this. It didn't. It completely made up the result, but presented it as fact, and that fact was then continued by the speaker, who of course isn't an astrophysicist, who then went, see, look how awesome Bard is. So when we talk about hallucination, and that's one that everybody talks about, so I won't hop on about it, it's just when an AI, it's a computer, it's going to be right. No, it won't. But the next risks are actually a lot more subtle and a lot more dangerous. So when we talk about Gen AI, generative AI, it's been trained on how things work. It's been trained on data sets to be able to find patterns. If I was to try and explain it in the simplest of terms, if I was to say, hey, here is a ladybug and here is a red Volkswagen, and said, how are these two things similar? Well, if I was to have an XY plot, I can go, well, these are colors, and this is organic to non-organic. They're both red, so they map here, but they're on different ends of the spectrum. And we call these vertices, right? When you look at AI, it's not an XY vertices. We're looking at 500, 800. In fact, each new AI is actually able to add now thousands of vertices. That when I'm combining these two things, it now understands exactly how there is context between these two objects. And this is what makes Gen AI so effective, because as I'm now typing in my very badly typed, grammatically incorrect, usually tonally inconsistent sentence, it's able to take that garbage, refactor it, understand it as a question, turn it into a proper question in its own terms, and provide me an answer. That is what generative AI is doing. And that's why when you're asking it to say, hey, make this sound like somebody else, it knows what that somebody else sounds like. But how? Because there was data it was trained on. So why do I make a big deal about the data? The data. Well, many of our AIs were trained on a wonderful, even-keeled, balanced, clean data source called the internet.
Got to believe everything that's on the internet, right, Julian? Yes. Yeah.
Yeah, and it's terrifying because, internet, as we all know, is full of fantastic information and incredibly scary information. And different AIs have tried to fix that by balancing, going, we're only training on these data sources, but all of these data sources present different bias. Now, as a teacher, I have inherent bias. Dan, as a speaker, you have inherent bias. It comes from us. It is who we are. It comes from the environment, the culture, the situation that we are in. But the good thing about that is the only person impacted by my bias is my students, and that's thankfully a small subset. The only people impacted by your bias, people who listen to you talk, which is even a smaller no, I'm going to say that. You've got a wonderful, wonderful audience. So, but we all know the joke I'm trying to make here. But when you look at the internet, what we've been seeing, and some of the early tests were done with things like DALL-E. DALL-E is an image generation tool, and a professor out of Hong Kong University, again, the name escapes me, my apologies, but if you go research this, you find the presentation up on YouTube. He went into Bing, which is Microsoft's public version of ChatGPT, and it's connected to DALL-E. And what this professor asked is, said, present me a picture of something beautiful that the world hasn't seen before. And it was nothing but images of landscapes and beautiful women, which, by the way, is our first bias. Is it negative? Comes down to definition of beautiful, definitions of sexism, but okay. The terrifying was the other end of the spectrum, where he rewrote the same question to say, present me something scary that nobody has seen before. And it was kind of pictures of like dark houses and a clown and a smiling African-American male. What we see here, and so when we talk about risk, and that's why it brings down this first rabbit hole, is the rabbit hole of bias. When you're dealing with a tool that you're expecting it to generate responses in text, or these days, video, oral, visual form, it is going to be provided with the inherent biases on the data that it came from, and you don't know what that data is. So that's the first more subtle risk to talk about. The second subtle risk is your data security. And I brought this up as our very first example, and this is nowhere near where it needs to be right now. In fact, one of the reasons that I do use AI a lot, and I use AIs on my laptop. Open source has fantastic tools. I'm using a whole bunch of AIs that aren't web connected, that happen purely on my MacBook, so nothing goes out to the web. Why? Because it means that when I'm feeding it, and I'm feeding it corporate data, I use it day to day in my job here at Quizizz. I promised Dan before we started talking here that, I hate bios, but you know what? I'm just going to put my CV in and get it to generate me an intro for this. So when you go, if you've come to this because you've read the website and thought, Julian sounds really interesting, yes, a GPT wrote that. I'll take no credit. But again, the point I want to make here is that the data you provide, what is happening with that data? Now, OpenAI have very openly said that all data is used to train the system. And it was only just last month. And if you're not aware of this, please go to their website. You can now actually fill out a form to state that I do not want my data being used to train. But unless you go and you fill out that form and you submit it, the default position is data is there. Just before Christmas, I did a presentation at a university where I did a live demonstration on the screen where I was actually able to find somebody else's CV by talking to ChatGPT-4. And not only was I able to find someone's CV, I was then able to get their personal information. I got their email address, their phone number, their postal address, because they had put all of this into ChatGPT to probably help them with a job application or maybe to rewrite something. But that data became part of a data set that by asking the right questions, I was able to pull up in front of an audience, which, by the way, I regret doing because I didn't actually expect to be that successful. So that's the second risk. Please be aware of what's happening, not just with the data you're getting, hallucination, but what's happening with the data that you're putting into it. And are you feeling safe with that? Those are two areas I think people don't think enough about: bias and data security. The last thing on data security, and then I'll pass back to you, but is what's already happened is we're now seeing more and more AIs being able to be connected. OpenAI started this by going, we've connected ours to the web. It can search the web for you. Yeah. And again, it acted like a year 5 student who when you ask them a question, it went Google. Oh, the first three responses will be accurate. Yeah, I'll take that. And yes, it's getting better, but it's just connected to the internet. But nowadays, you can now connect lots of your apps. You can connect Gmail to an AI. You can connect Microsoft have released Copilot, which is again connected to their own form of what they call an isolated GPT. It's on their own Azure servers, so it's not leaking your data out. Again, do your research, but Microsoft are doing a really good job on this. But when you start going, oh, I'm going to connect this thing to the AI. Oh, I'm going to connect my school data set to an AI.
Yeah.
Do you really know what's happening with that data?
Right.
So those are the things that we should be thinking about. Yes, what is it going to present to our students? That's rather obvious, but think about your data and think about the biases inherent in the system, because both those things are way more dangerous than I think most people realize.
Yeah. Wow. Very, very thought-provoking, and yeah, and I would echo those concerns. So in light of that, then what should teachers do? Right. So yeah, we want them run aware, alert but not alarmed, right? As that expression goes, or aware but not alarmed. But we know there's, especially here in Australia, but it's a global phenomenon. There's a drastic shortage of teachers. So AI seems like the fantastic solution to solve them with their with all their assist them with their administrative and other activities, and creating plans for their courses, but also for the students to develop more of that one-on-one individualized learning, and that study after study has shown that's how people learn and retain. So what should teachers do, and how do they juggle all this?
All right. Well, you've heard me, and every time I do an interview or do a talk, you see this Jekyll and Hyde in me. I always start off with Hyde, because I think Hyde is critically important, and you just heard me talk about risks and things to be aware of. Now that you've seen my Hyde, I'm going to be releasing my full Jekyll, which is so awesome, and it's worth doing, because, as you said, these are brilliant tools. They are fantastic time-saving tools. In Australia, we are actually better positioned than many countries to utilise them. We have been focused in Australia for years in our K-12 institutions on the importance of critical thinking. We don't want to learn by rote. We want to get the students understanding. We want them, let's just talk about the stereotypes for a second, but yes, we're going to talk about blooms. We want them to be up the top and the creating, the higher order elements, right? And the great thing is that we've positioned our students that way is we have made them perfect for this AI revolution, because they are already being taught how to critically evaluate. They're already being taught how to validate, verify, quantify, and transform. This is brilliant. And this puts our students higher than many when it comes to utilizing these tools, as long as they've been made aware of the things we talked about at the beginning. When it comes back to tools, well, this is where the alert but alarmed is a great statement. We want to be alarmed, but we can also just do things smart. Now, I'm going to be saying something that I can't believe I'm saying out loud, but this is where I do.
Don't worry, this isn't recorded.
It's not being recorded. So, none of these things will come back to haunt me at any point. No, but this is where I do have to have some trust in the big players. Now, what I mean by trust in the big players is Microsoft have actually been. I'm an Apple person. I'm an open source person. Hating Microsoft is just part of my DNA. And with Obama in charge, it was so easy. I will not actually stop saying from the rooftops how much I'm impressed by how Satya and the engineering teams have been working with Microsoft, and how they've been saying, hey, these tools are really powerful, really good, but we're going to allow you to create your own isolated areas. We're going to create tools like Copilot. We're going to make them accessible for educators, but we're going to put a whole bunch of safeguards, and you can control the level of creativity that this thing spits out. So you can control its degree of bias, its degree of flavor, so for lack of a better word. These are fantastic. Apple are also moving towards AI. They're doing it very slowly. They're doing it cautiously. Apple are renowned for not being first to market, but by trying to be right to market. I'm not here to say Apple is better than anything else. My point is that you should always read your terms and conditions. We all say that, and yet nobody does. And we'll be honest on that. So what I have been doing is having to have a degree of trust in the larger companies. I did not trust OpenAI at all at the beginning, and it turned out for good reason. Not that they're a bad company. Again, careful how we position. But they made lots of mistakes. And they've learnt from those mistakes, and they now have a more informed board, and they're trying to move a bit slower. But when I deal with the larger companies, I feel safer. So, when companies, and I will happily say, Edalex is part of it, and Microsoft and Google and, all these companies, if you're working with brands that you can trust that have proven their intent and proven their capability, then that is always where I'd recommend you start, especially back to the joke I made earlier. If you're not that kind of person who's good at being that first, who's good at critical thinking it. Secondly, make sure you teach your students. There is so much up there. When we first banned it, and again, I've already come out and said I die on the hill saying that was the right thing to do, it didn't stop students from using it. In fact, and we all of a sudden saw inequitability in the market because private schools started doing more with it first, and now state schools didn't have access to it. This university did, but that one didn't. We started seeing inequity in the market. So students went, I don't want to wait for you to make me equitable. I want to have the same experience everybody else does, so I'm just going to do it anyway. We can't stop that. Right. And anybody who thinks they can is the same person who says, oh, yeah, we're going to lock down our wireless network at the organization because that way nobody will access things that they're not going to. And they forget that every student just does this. Like, again, we've gotten a lot smarter over the years. And our leaders, thankfully, as a whole, can't say for all of them, but as a whole, we have gotten a lot smarter. So we can't ban. We can be reticent. We can be conservative, we can be informed, but then we also have to ensure that we teach our students. And that again comes back that I think our students in Australia are right up there because of our focus on critical thinking. So now we just have to provide them the same kind of talk I'm giving you now. It's like, okay, how do I evaluate an AI tool? How do I understand the risks of these tools? And then great, off you go. And if you're not sure, just if you think it's safe, great, use it. If you don't think it's safe, don't use it. And if you're not sure, ask. I mean, it's stupid 101 stuff, and yet we're not enforcing it. So that's really kind of where I try and sit on it. But any idea of I'm just going to tell them no, and if they don't, I'll say no again. Look, that's not going to work. And let's finish off this ramble on this last point. I think this is important. Over the last year and a half, we have had numerous analogies to where are we in the world. And I've heard so many people go, AI is the next calculator moment. This is not a calculator moment. And the reason I paused, I want to make this really clear. This is a Gutenberg press moment. For those of you who aren't familiar, the Gutenberg press, very famous device, is how we started printing our first books. We had the idea of being able to place type, being able to pull a press down, be able to print. It was a technology that significantly shifted society. It is because of the Gutenberg press that we had the Renaissance. I'm not saying the Renaissance is because of the Gutenberg press, but the Renaissance would not have happened without the press. This piece of technology allowed for the faster sharing of information. It allowed for education, where instead of having things written out by scrolls, my old joke is a monk crying over a desk, another person going, oh no, our copier hath broken down. We moved on from those days to being able to mass print and share information. Generative AI is having that societal shift right now, and it is happening faster than ever in history before. We are having tools that are replacing not jobs. We're having tools that are replacing careers. Ooh. Copywriters are already a dying art. What happens if this computer can go through and rewrite copy for me? But is this evil? No, because what it's also doing is it's also turbocharging those, and especially where we are right now. Right now, most people's jobs are safe. Do you know why? AI only works if you can ask it the right question. Yeah. And until people know how to ask it the right, number of people have come to me and said, Julian, can you give us a quote for an e-learning course? And I might provide a quote of X, and they'll go, oh, we don't want to pay that much. We can just go and do it ourselves. And I'm like, that's fine. But of course, they don't have the skills and the knowledge. Like, well, what is educational theory? How should we format these objects? How do we go multimodal? All the things that we know as e-learning instructor designers. Until someone can answer exactly the right question, I don't know exactly how to provide the right responses. And our AIs are kind of at that level right now. But we're seeing that shift, and it's already happening fast. We are seeing every week in Australian newspaper another job being let go because it's being replaced by an AI tool. What I will say, to not be doom and gloom, is an AI will not replace you. whoever you are listening to this, an AI will not replace you. I'll guarantee you that. But a person who knows how to use an AI very well might.
Yes. Which is a similar, and while it doesn't have didn't have the same impact, but the whole question of, well, if my content is in the LMS, then do they still need me as a teacher? Or if my lecture is recorded, am I going to be replaced by that lecture capture system, right? So, yeah.
And let me make this personal, because this is one of the reasons I joined Quizizz. And I did, again, I don't mind saying that, I stressed it down. Like, I don't want to be here to say, hey, buy our product, this is awesome. This is not the intent of this conversation. What attracted me to this company is I think they have the balance right. See, what Quizizz does is it's there to not replace the teacher, it's there to augment. So what Quizizz does is it allows you to point to something like a YouTube video or to one of your documents, and it will go through and then create a fun, engaging, formative assessment out of that material for you. Or I can say, actually, here's a quiz that I've written in multiple choice questions. My students aren't resonating well with that. So can you go through and it will actually change it into different question types, maybe matching and something else. Or I can say, take this quiz, but do this quiz in the tone of William Shakespeare, and it'll take your questions and rewrite all these things we're seeing. None of these things are replacing the teacher, because you still had to know what was what was the quiz you wanted to create in the first place. What is the knowledge I'm trying to either teach through this quiz or assess through this quiz? That comes from you. But where it used to take you maybe half an hour to go through, build it, this thing now might go, oh, great, you put the lesson plan in, it's spat it out, and you've just iterated 3 or 4 questions. That, for me, is where today I think AI is brilliant and solves that first problem I mentioned at the beginning, which for me, the EdTech space has always been, how do we do quality education at scale? 10 PDFs and a quiz was not quality education, but it's what we had time for. And I never berated somebody who started that way. I berated people who stayed that way, and I thonged them very hard. But I've never berated anybody who started that way. And the same with AI. Like, where do we start is one thing, but how do we use these tools? Well, great. I can now take it and take a resource that I've got and say, actually, can you break this down into lower order thinking? Or can you actually give me 4 other examples of this, but in a different way?
Right.
And that is huge for us as educators and allows us to focus on what we want to do, which is more quality time with our students. And that is the moving from doom and gloom to the good stuff. If you're not using AI right now to differentiate, to help provide multimodal, I'm going to throw out some fantastic tools that I use, things like 11 Labs. It goes through and takes any document that turns it into my voice with tone and passion and the intonation. You could not tell it wasn't me unless I was talking right next to it. I used another tool called Hey Gen, which I can take anything, any script I put into it, and it generates a video of me. And if you haven't, just again, Google Hey Gen. It's both exciting and terrifying at the same time. But I have used that to create videos of instruction material in Spanish. I don't speak Spanish.
Right.
But I used an AI to generate the Spanish. I then put it into Hey Gen, and it created a video of me talking in Spanish that you could not tell was not me. That I find is enabling me to provide better education than I could have before. So yeah, that's where I think that the excitement is, and where that social shift is coming from. It's enabling us to do more, as long as, again, we make sure we find the right balance.
Right. Well, and having seen the video of you speaking fluently in Spanish and then jumping to German and then Mandarin, so and all languages that you have no knowledge of is both exhilarating and awe-inspiring, but also terrifying. And so expanding on that theme, given your experience at different EdTechs and mine as well, where from putting our EdTech platform provider hats on, what are good uses of AI, and what are poor choices, and I say that in the context of a well-respected colleague and friend in the Australian EdTech sector has said, like, every EdTech provider has to be in AI. If you're not in AI, then you're dead. So a number of companies are whitewashing and saying, oh, of course we've got AI. We're all about AI, when it's just so that they can say they have AI in their platform. So yes, where do you see good practical, helpful, and then where is it potentially harmful?
Well, let me start off with, for once, a short, quick response, which is it's useful if it provides a genuine solution to a genuine problem. Like, that's what a good EdTech provider does. Every now and again, we'll see that random thing come out that looks really cool, but it didn't really solve a genuine problem, and it doesn't last. The only things that will work is when we solve genuine problems with genuine solutions. Match that with an appropriate price point. Dare I say, if we're talking EdTech providers, that's our role. We have to pay our staff.
Yeah.
We have to do that. So a genuine problem with a genuine solution at a price point that equates to market. That's the short answer. But if we unpack that a little bit, Quizizz, I think, is very much on that right path. One of the reasons I joined them, we've got this problem that, teachers regularly build formative assessments all the time. It's a standard part of education.
Yeah.
And the engineering team here do fantastic things. They're trying to solve problems. Oh, what happens if all the students don't have a device where you can print out cards, basically QR code that the student can turn A, B, C, and D. And the teacher just points their phone at the room. It captures all the codes at once and it gives you the response. So you can still build this wonderful online assessment, but have it work in an offline classroom. That's a problem that we have. Not only because I don't need to have access to that technology, but I don't want every student with an iPad on their desk getting completely distracted.
Yeah.
I want to go through and be able to say I found this, my background, for those who don't know, I'm a history teacher by trade. I love teaching history, but history is all about artifacts. And more importantly, history is about context. And I'd love to try and contextualize things to what's happening in current day. I'm going to show my age. When I was teaching history, we had Gulf War II going on, right? So, but I'd show all these wonderful examples of propaganda and, well, this happened, but I'm going to show you an Al Jazeera and a BBC and a Fox News. Which one is right?
Right.
If you go, I don't know, right? But the great thing about the AI tools is I can now go, these things are happening today. My daughter, I have a 15-year-old, was asking me questions about the Gaza conflict that I could not unpack. I was too afraid to unpack, let alone not informed enough to unpack. But I found a fantastic behind the news. BTN, again, I know we have a global audience. BTN is run by the ABC, the government-run broadcasting corporation, and it's a news show for students. And they did this fantastic 15-minute packet on the history of the Gaza conflict. So not only did I provide that to her, but that I then connected Quizizz to it and had it generate a quick formative test that allowed her to reinforce that knowledge. Now, all I had to do is I found this great video and I pointed this tool at it, but I didn't have to worry about it hallucinating because it was just going and grabbing it. I didn't have to worry about data because my daughter wasn't in that system. She was just logged in as an anonymous user. So I was able to do all these cool things. So back to the EdTech provider. First of all, I agree with the first comment. Again, you're not going to be replaced by an AI, but you'll be replaced by somebody who knows how to use an AI. And yes, that's going to impact us as EdTechs. So whatever our problem is that our tool is solving, be it timetabling solutions, or maybe we're doing knowledge creation, or maybe we're an LMS, or all these different or engagement, whatever it might be. How can you find that right hammer that helps you with your existing product, but make it more valuable and make it more efficient? And by the way, EdTech, okay, let's put the black cap on. We also want to save money. So great, how can I also use this to optimize our workflows, to provide a better product for our users, right? That's how we should be looking at it. And the opposite answer to your question is literally just flip that on its head. If you're doing AI but not solving a genuine problem, you're not going to have long-term or even midterm success. You'll have a flash in the pan moment perhaps and you'll disappear. If you have a tool that you're not actually thinking about it from a data perspective and how you're protecting your users, which you should be doing anyway, then you're going to be sunk. If you are doing this and not solving a genuine problem for them, then the reverse is just flip that on its head. But I do agree with the opening statement. Everybody in society, for better or for worse, is being impacted by AI. It's how we choose to leverage it, utilize it, take advantage of it, and risk manage it. That will be the secret to our success.
Brilliant. Brilliant. There are so many thoughts and threads I want to pull on, Julian, but I'm also cognizant of your time, and so yeah, we might have to make a series of these. So maybe I'll I'll ask you two final questions, and I like to ask people, where do they see 5 years from now? But as you pointed out, 14 months ago, a year and a half ago, is when ChatGPT, broke onto the global scene. So 5 years is maybe too long in terms of AI, but where do you think AI will be and we will be as a society with AI in 3 years?
No, that is a really terrifying question. Again, if you had gone back, let's just give away a time in space they can remember. COVID has just finished. We're finally allowed out of our houses. We're going back to the office. And I was to say, how do you think your workplace is going to change? Everybody's focus would have been on the work from home because that was our immediate impact right then and there. Oh, I'm going to be working from home. And we've had a huge societal shift and ongoing debate around what we should be doing. But the reason I bring up that example is that your focus on society shift was so narrow because that was the immediate change that you had seen and where you see it evolving. Right now, when we ask the question of where do we see AI going, it's very easy to kind of, again, follow the logical path of, well, it's going to keep getting smarter and smarter. Each new version, and let's just talk about GPT. There are a lot more AIs out there than GPT, right? There are literally thousands of them. Open source corporate models, Bard, Bing, Midjourney, DALL-E. So let's just talk about ChatGPT for the sake of this discussion. ChatGPT's growth and speed is increasing at faster than exponential rate. Its capability of data source, of data query, of speed, and of price to use. It's priced in what's called tokens. We're not going to unpack that now.
Yeah.
But when they released ChatGPT 4, and then less than a year, I think it was only something like 7 or 8 months, they released ChatGPT 4 Turbo, which made it significantly cheaper. We're looking at this fast exponential rate. It's not too hard to go, well, we're going to be in a world that the AI will be smarter than me in the next 2 years. And that's really even scary for me to say out loud. But, this is the huge but, just because something is smarter doesn't mean it knows what to do with it. I do not believe we're heading into Terminator, end of the world, it's going to gain sentience. But by the way, intelligence and sentience are two very distinctly different things. And when you speak to AI researchers, you do not gain emotion because you're more intelligent. In fact, many will argue that the more intelligent people become, the less emotional they are. Sorry, maths teachers, I look at you. We look at the stereotypes. And again, everybody in this room watching this knows that was a very badly made joke. Yeah. But when we do look at the research, though, like, emotion doesn't come out of intelligence. And yet when we look at a machine who's upset that the world did these things against it and now it's going to rise up, like when we see those kind of end of world scenarios, we are seeing about emotional response. I am more optimistic than that. The other thing I'm optimistic about is that society is catching up. We will never be ahead and we have to recognize that, but we are already asking better questions of how we do these things than we did just a year ago and the year before that. So yes, these things are going to get more and more intelligent. We're going to be able to do more and more things. We're going to have more and more risk of not being able to tell what video is real, what text is real. But we're also going to be able to do really, really exciting things with it. What I find really exciting is the changes that you don't expect. What happens when AI works well is it's AI that you don't see. Again, let's move to another stupid analogy. The best special effects are the special effects that you don't see. Like when I watch Star Wars, I go, oh, wow, that was amazing. But I see every special effect. Like that lightsaber is obviously not real. But when I go and now watch every TV show, it doesn't matter what you're watching.
Yes.
That set is not real. It's probably green screen. And in fact, what that person's holding probably wasn't real. They're drinking water. They're probably not. You literally don't see the special effect anymore. It has just become part of the experience. That's what we're starting to see now. And by the way, we have it already. We've said AI is not new. We've had lots of AIs silently working in the background. Our traffic lights are driven by an AI system that keeps them optimized so that we have less traffic flow. That's a silent, a transparent AI. As these things are getting better, we're going to see more and more things. Our self-driving cars As much as we look at Tesla at the moment and go, who wouldn't trust that with a barge pole, it will get so much better because it now, old AI was brute force data. It's so hard to unpack this, knowing this is meant to be a short question, but it used to just be, we're going to just keep throwing more and more data. We're going to brute force data till we try and understand. What generative AI in all its forms is doing is it's actually now able to understand context. It's able to understand and better iterate upon it. So we're going to see education systems, coaching systems, what Khan Academy are going to be launching with Khan Migo, for those who haven't followed that.
Yeah.
That is not replacing a teacher. This is what I think Khan Migo is brilliant. It's what if we could create a tutor on demand that was written in a Socratic method, is not going to provide answers to the student, but it's connected to this entire database of academic excellence, which in this case is what they're saying is a Khan Academy database, right? So we've got this hopefully non-biased or relatively non-biased data set, but a student can ask, how do I do this? And an AI at any hour of the day can not just take their question, but contextualize it back to them in a way that suits their language, their tone, their level of understanding, and in a Socratic method where it leads them to a response. By the way, that is not replacing a teacher. That's replacing part of a teacher's role. And that's really an important distinction to finish this on. We will lose lots of the parts of our role. That is not a negative, because when I lose that ability to say, he's going to be able to answer those questions, but accurately for that student, I can now spend more time with that student on a one-on-one talking about what drives them and actually finding how to make a really good quality education experience. And that was the dream of the Industrial Revolution. Robots, machinery will make our lives easier. And it has. If there was a zombie apocalypse tomorrow, I'm screwed because I don't know how to fix a car. I don't know how to get an engine working. I don't even know how to siphon fuel out of a tank. But those are all skills that we lost because we got the comfort of the Industrial Revolution. Our new AI revolution is going to bring a new level of comfort. With it will come lost skills that will make us even more prone to a zombie apocalypse. But at the same point, will bring a whole bunch of benefits that will hopefully ensure that we will never have the zombie apocalypse in the first place because we've already solved all those issues that would have caused zombies to have come. And that is my positive end to this. It's our intelligence, our capacity will significantly increase. We have to be wary, we have to be smart, we have to be informed. But as long as we do those things, we will lose parts of the role that will allow us to focus on the parts of the role that are most important to us. And that is what makes us human.
Wonderfully said. And how quickly we'll forget what we used to have to do, right? And say, remember when we used to have to do the things that...
Have you talked to your child about, remember when you used to have to read an encyclopedia? Remember when you used to have to look up an atlas? Remember when I used to have 15 phone calls before I went to the city to meet up with my friends so we had everything? But that's old tech. That all disappeared.
Right.
The first season of 24 doesn't work when you introduce a mobile phone to it. So...
I'll have to go back and yes. Yeah.
It's terrifying. You watch it just go, why didn't they just call somebody? The show would have been over in 1 hour.
24 seconds.
24 seconds. That would have been the entire show. But it's a fun way to finish up. But no, as long as technology never replaces humanity, and I know that's a weird thing to say, but humanity is our connection, is our wants, is our loves, is our needs. These are the things that drive us as a species, as a society, as a culture that shapes our environment over time, right? Machines can help or hinder us on that path. War machines have hindered us. Tanks, brilliant invention, awful invention. Internet, you could probably say a bit of both, right? But it's how we as a society move with it. And I do have a belief in society. And it doesn't mean I believe government, but society shapes its government. I have a huge belief in society and I am genuinely excited where the future will take us. But yeah, I think it's just AI has become more transparent. It will just change more and more of everyday life and allow us to focus on what we call those more important things, whatever that happens to be for you, me, or society as a whole.
Wonderful. And thinking about my 7 and 8-year-old children and your 15-year-old daughter, what the future holds for them is exciting as long as we strike that balance and use I love that sentiment you've outlined there, Julian, around society and society driving government and our decisions as humans. So wonderful. Well, thank you. There's so much in that session. I really enjoyed our discussion as always.
Thank you for having me on.
My pleasure. Yeah, thanks again. And I'm sure I will see you at a booth at a conference somewhere, and we'll continue this dialogue. And now I have it on record so that I can say 3 years from now we'll revisit this in 2027. And no, I think
and when my household has locked me in a room and refused to let me out for my own safety, you can say, Julian, you were wrong.
The zombies outside beg to differ.
Yeah, beg to differ.
Yeah.
So look, I will end up on this. If anybody is excited about this, look, I am a passionate sharer of knowledge. I do love community of practice. I just use the handle Ridden, EDURIDDEN. If you're on Twitter or Threads or LinkedIn, feel free to go there. It's a fascinating space to watch. And make sure you find communities of practice that are talking about these things, and hopefully you'll discover some of the fear, but also discover some of the love as well, and see what I can do for you this year. So can't wait to see what people do with it.
Wonderful. Yeah. And look, we'll share those details, and thank you for your time today, but more broadly, the contributions you make back to that community and help inform me and so many others around the world. So great catching up again, Julian. So thank you so much.
Yeah. Many thanks, Dan.
Thanks for tuning in to this Edalex podcast episode. Don't forget to follow us in your podcast app so you don't miss a thing. And be sure to visit our website at edalex.com to learn more.